How often do you make plans but don't stick to them? Do you always fall back into your bad habits? Do they torture you and limit your life? To finally live the one life we have as best as we can, it's time to get rid of bad habits, and you will be surprised how easy it is. In The Power of Habit, Charles Duhigg examines why we do what we do and how we can effectively change everything we want. Watch this summary until the end to find out how you can finally start to live your life without your bad habits. In the 1990s, a group of researchers at MIT were studying mice and their brain functions. They put them into a T-shaped maze and placed a piece of chocolate at one of its ends. When the mice were first put inside the maze, their brain activity spiked because they could smell the chocolate and began searching for it. But when the experiment was repeated, the researchers noticed something surprising. As the mice gradually learned where they could find the chocolate and how to get there, their brain activity decreased. Going there became an automatic routine, allowing their brains to save energy. They didn't even have to think about it, and that's exactly what happens to us. In fact, more than 40% of our daily actions aren't actual decisions, they are habits. And since our habits influence such a large part of how we think and what we actually do, they have an enormous impact on our health, our productivity, our relationships, or in short, everything. Our overall happiness depends on them. There are so many smokers wanting to quit. There are so many of us trying to lose that weight and starting a workout routine. There are so many people wanting to learn new things or do something they've never done before, but they just don't know how. The reason people fail to change their habits is that they don't understand the nature of habits. We assume that we can simply apply our willpower to get rid of bad habits, but according to Duhigg, applying willpower alone is not effective because this method doesn't address the elements that fuel and reinforce our habits. To understand this, we have to take a look at the habit loop, or how a habit is formed according to Duhigg. First, there's a cue, a trigger that tells our brain to move into automatic mode to execute a specific routine. In the author's case, every time he sees a cookie, he feels an urge to eat it. Second comes the routine. We act out the behavior, an automatic routine our brain has stored. Example, we open the jar of cookies and eat one of them. The third step is our reward. It's the result of our routine. Feeling the sugar rush from eating the cookie could be the reward in this example. Now, if we want to change a bad habit, like eating a cookie every time we see one, we have to follow the golden rule of habit change. If you want to learn more about a habit itself, also check out our summary of Atomic Habits by James Clear. He breaks down the formation of habits even more detailed. So how can we use this simple instruction, the so-called golden rule of habit change? To get rid of bad habits, we have to keep the old cue that triggers our cravings and also deliver the old reward, but we have to change the routine in between. What we need to do is insert a new routine. Thereby, anyone can change his or her habits. Whether we want to stop wasting hours mindlessly scrolling through social media, snacking on unhealthy food, or drinking too much alcohol, we can use this golden rule to gain power over our bad habits by following 4 steps. Step 1. Changing the routine. Since the most obvious part of our habits is the routine, that's the easiest step. In the author's case, the habit he wanted to change was going to the cafeteria at his office building in New York every afternoon to buy and eat a chocolate chip cookie, because this caused him to gain weight. Of course, the routine we want to change can be anything, from watching too much Netflix to smoking to wasting too much time procrastinating. Step 2. Identify the reward. Now that we've identified the routine we want to change, we have to discover the nature of the craving that glues the cue and the reward together. Therefore, we need to experiment a little bit with the rewards to figure out what part of the routine we're truly craving. Charles Duhigg found out the craving that was driving his routine of eating a chocolate chip cookie every afternoon at the New York Times cafeteria was actually less obvious than the craving for a cookie. It was going outside his office and socializing with other colleagues at the cafeteria. Often, this is also the reason why smokers can't quit their habit of smoking cigarettes, because they think they are craving the nicotine in the cigarette. But what they actually crave is something else. For some, the act of smoking simply relieves stress and provides a temporary escape from work. Others crave a cigarette because they associate smoking with going outside and socializing with other smokers, just like the author does when he goes to the cafeteria to eat that cookie. But as Duhigg doesn't need a cookie to experience the reward he's actually craving, most smokers don't need a cigarette to experience their cigarette craving. Maybe the same goes with our social media habits. When we have the urge to check Instagram, TikTok, or Twitter, which can lead to hours of wasted time, we often just do it to satisfy our need for stimulation and experience a temporary escape from our thoughts. So let's try to change the reward, and instead of eating that cookie, smoking the next cigarette, or wasting time checking social media, let's reward ourselves with the things that really fulfill our cravings. Step 3. Identifying the cue. This step will help us figure out exactly what's triggering us to engage in our habit. At this point, we should know both the routine and the reward of our habit, in addition to the craving the reward satisfies. So now we have to identify the cue. According to Duhigg, almost all habitual cues fit into one of the following categories: time, emotional state, location, other people, and what's happening immediately before we engage in the habit. The next time we feel a craving, let's consider these 5 categories to isolate the cue to our habit. By doing so, Duhigg realized that what drove his behavior wasn't hunger or the need for immediate energy, but the need for a temporary distraction from work and his office at a certain time in the afternoon. In detail, the one that comes from gossiping with a colleague. So that led him to step 4, making a plan. Now it was finally time for him to put the golden rule of habit change into practice and come up with a plan that should help him to break the habit loop. So he decided that instead of going to the cafeteria every afternoon, he will walk to a colleague's desk and talk to him for 10 minutes. Thereby, he kept not only the reward, the temporary distraction from work, but also the cue, the time the craving appeared. The only thing he needed to change was the routine. Instead of eating a chocolate chip cookie at the cafeteria, he resolved to satisfy his craving for some leisure time by forcing himself to talk to a colleague. And even if the change didn't take effect immediately, it worked perfectly in the long run. That's how he found out that by keeping the cue and the reward and simply changing the routine that bridges them, both our automatic habits and our new, better self get what they want. Simply understanding how habits work can help anyone change their habits by using the golden rule and following these 4 steps. And as willpower alone rarely works, writing down your new habits can help to stick with them. Write down the following and fill in the blanks. When I will to experience. It's time to get in the habit of getting curious about our habits and asking ourselves, what is the routine I am following automatically? What's the real reward I seek and the cue for this reward that triggers my craving for this bad habit? Now, with this knowledge, how can I change the routine? Then, it's time to make a plan and write it down to change your routine and satisfy the craving by changing the reward. Duhigg says that believing in our ability to change bad habits is an essential part of overcoming our cravings to permanently change any habit. What do you think about the power of habit? Do you think this book can help you to get rid of your bad habits and avoid falling back? Comment below and be sure to subscribe.